This is the Belvedere Renaissance Master at Lions Council and the student Records. This committee meeting was scheduled for 2 weeks ago, and we could not get on the dais a sufficient number of people, so we put it on for 2 weeks, and we're still a little short. This is kind of unusual for our dais because we usually have full dais. Anyway, we've got important people in the audience. We've got city manager, we've got the fire inspector, we have, let's see, it's the assistant mayor. Is that correct? Vice mayor, Belvedere, second in command of the library, second in command of the Belvedere police department, so on and so forth. So welcome, and we will get going. Which was pretty obvious, so we don't really need to.
Dr. Cromwell, I think your microphone needs to be turned on.
Okay.
You can't hear me? Now it's too loud, yeah.
You need to record.
Okay, all right, I'll move that back a little bit, so it's not quite so. Approval of minutes of September 17, do we have, were those passed out, Lori? Okay, so that's all we're doing now is posting them online. Okay, any comments? I'm sorry?
Unless you have an action item.
Okay. Okay,
Can you do me a favor when you post the minutes that you send out a link to them?
probably a good idea, so remind people.
So I have not reviewed minutes.
And, okay, so let's move ahead with an open forum. This is an opportunity for anyone in the audience, excuse me, to let us know what their concerns are. If they are, is it something on the agenda? We'll get to that shortly. If it's not on the agenda and is a particularly lengthy item, we will put that on a schedule for a future meeting. Anybody in the audience have any comments at this point? All right.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Hi, it's Holly Thier. I wanted to apologize. I am not feeling well today, and with everything going around, I could not make it in person. I will be here listening, as that is all I'm allowed to do. But I wanted to tell my other committee members that I apologize, but I am pretty sick today.
Well, sorry, Holly, for that, and we hope you get better. You're certainly not the only one who's under the weather at this point, so hope to see you next meeting. And make sure you let us know if you have any comments during the proceedings. So we'll go on ahead with our first presentation, which is, yes,
We do have one more person that would like to speak.
okay.
Christy Berry, hold on one sec. Go ahead, Christy.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Sort of,
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
yes.
All right, great. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak. Now, this is a not on the agenda, correct?
Correct.
All right, great. I got a little speech here I want to read. The media keeps pushing the LGBT narrative to confuse children to sicken our society. The Western world is the only place where this filth is tolerated. We need to stand against the pedophilic degenerate cult. An Islamic nation would and will never tolerate this, and us Americans shouldn't either. Let us not forget that just recently in Tennessee, a mentally ill transgender person gunned down 3 children and 3 adults. We don't need gun control, we need to crack down on the violence from the left. Democrats countrywide celebrated the killing of innocent Christians. Where was the comment from the city on the Covenant School in Nashville? But they had a comment when it was about George Floyd, aka Fentanyl Floyd. It's disgusting to see leftists cheer for drag shows with kids, to convince them they are the wrong gender and encourage surgical genital mutilation. How can regular people who just want to be left alone coexist with a group that literally wants to maim children? What is a woman? Well, the Cambridge Dictionary says a woman is an adult female human being. Does taking hormone blockers make you a woman? Does castrating yourself make you a woman? Does dressing up as one make you a woman? No. Doing all these things just makes you a mentally ill man. It's wrong for society to cater to a seriously mentally ill minority of people and expect us to go along with their delusional thinking. When someone suffers from schizophrenia, we don't reinforce the delusions as truth. We shouldn't for transgenderism either. How can we take anyone seriously when they don't even know what gender they are? Transgender women are men. Transgender men are women. The LGBT culture is a cult. The mentally ill minority must not be allowed to rule over us. Where do we draw the line? Child castration? Having children taken from their parents for not going along with the mob? Having sex offenders teach children? At this point, nothing is off the table for the degenerate woke leftist cult. For being a group that wants acceptance, they're quick to advocate for violence against anyone who disagrees with them. Only two genders exist, and no amount of tantrums will change that. Sometimes the truth hurts, and some of you need to hear it. Go to gtvflyers.com or goyamtv.tv to learn more about the truth. Thank you.
It is.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Might suggest that the next time you have comments for us, it might be best to submit them in writing before the meeting so we can digest those before the meeting. What group do you represent? No longer there?
They've been muted.
Okay.
I can.
All right. Well, so we will move ahead unless anyone has any comments. I'm not even sure who he represented anyway. All right. So we'll go ahead with a presentation from Marshall Now, who is with Southern Marin Fire. This is about something called LRAD, which stands for Long Range Acoustic Device, which I believe they have in Mill Valley. Is that correct? And yeah, for those of you in the audience, this is a system that is a bit above the alerting system siren system that we currently have in Belvedere Tiburon, which is now rather outdated, and we will be discussing that as an item in a few minutes. And so, Marshall, would you like to fill us in on the particulars of LRAD?
Absolutely. Hopefully you can hear me all right.
Sure.
So as you said, my name is Marshall Now. I work for the Southern Marin Fire District. I'm the deputy fire marshal there. And since 2020, I've been in charge of installing LRAD, as you mentioned, as part of our Southern Marin Emergency Notification Network. Currently, there's 13 installed sites with about 3 more proposed for the next calendar year. LRAD, as you also mentioned, stands for Long Range Acoustic Device. It started as a LRAD technology run by the LRAD Corporation. And it has eventually been purchased by Genesis, who, if you've heard the name before, has also in the last 2 years purchased Zonehaven, which is the county-wide emergency zone evacuation software we use. That platform is actually now called Genesis. So that parent company has rebranded everything. I've got an updated set of slides, nothing really all that important, but I presented to this group back in 2022, kind of highlighting what we were doing and the benefits. At the time, we were utilizing a single site that's in the town of Tiburon. That was part of your previous siren system. The old style, I don't know the manufacturer itself, but their style is the rotating beacons. We kind of utilize that site, the pole itself, to upgrade it with all the technology and equipment for the LRAD site as part of our notification, since that location in the town of Tiburon is within the district of Southern Marin Fire Protection District. Moving forward, we have been through quite a different number of hoops with everything from environmental compliance all the way up to troubleshooting, storm impacts to the sites. So I've got quite a bit to kind of unpack for you and provide you with information to better guide you towards what your selection is for emergency notification and outdoor notification. The real big claim to fame that LRAD, or now Genesis, has is that it's not just a siren. It has the ability to broadcast any siren you'd like. So it doesn't just have to be the high-low or whale or, one of the kind of the sirens that indicate, something with tsunami or anything else, but also has the ability to present an audible recording, something verbal where you can give immediate and important information to your community. More recently, it's being kind of tooled with to provide alternate languages to be put out in certain demographics. Our approach at Southern Marin is to be more strategic with it. We are opting for more sites and less sirens so that we can actually utilize that Zone Haven platform, which is now Genesis, and target specific groups throughout our communities. Obviously, across the bay, the Southern Marin area is highly entrenched in valleys and kind of steep terrain. Sound doesn't go around corners very well. It can bounce off hillsides, which we've experienced, but we have found to be more targeted with our approach, which provides with a more strategic implementation throughout our community. The benefit there with more sites is that we can target those specific neighborhoods or zone groups out of Genesis in the platform. But obviously it takes more equipment and more time to kind of plan that. The other element with that environmental compliance, we found when you upgrade a siren or a site, it's much easier to upgrade a pre-existing. That's why on the Karen Way Bel Air campus, where we utilized one of the pre-existing Town of Tiburon sites, it was much easier for us to move along because there was already a pre-existing siren, which allowed for us to kind of sit within that footprint of environmental compliance there. Not that that property had a whole lot of environmental issues, but some of the locations within our jurisdiction we have found are along the perimeter of open space or national park land, and we have found that the sound sensitivity for some of those areas increases our kind of components there. Granted, there are CEQA clauses and codes that we were able to implement with our review that provides for existing sites to be upgraded much more readily and easily with less impacts to what we're doing. That's where we've upgraded some of the sites on our fire stations with that same manner, as well as, like I mentioned, that pre-existing site. In addition to just that, the limited impact to infrastructure and the additional work to either put in a new post or identify a new building to put it on, because you already have existing infrastructure in place, the swap out procedure is relatively seamless, a lot easier. But obviously, if there are new buildings in mind, the installer is really great with working out the best ways to place them on the building. There's multiple different options. You can either mount them to the side of the building through more permanent bracing, or you can do like a non-penetrating roof mount if it's a flat enough surface. There are limitations to how the sound and the horns themselves can be distributed from the point of origin. This would be more to what we run into in our area, like I'd mentioned, those steep valleys and terrain. When we go high, it is a little challenging to push it down low into the valley. It still gets a pretty wide spread, but as far as physically directing the siren, it is a little bit more challenging. They have a minimum. I don't know what the percentage is, but I want to say it's a pointing down is only about a 4 to 8 degree from plane. Pointing up, they have a little bit more. That's just their bracket, so I'm sure they could overcome that in some way. But that's one challenge that we ran into, trying to utilize these sirens in a more strategic approach. Each one of the sirens is very specific to a cone pattern. So you can build out from just a 60-degree cone all the way out to 360 degrees, depending on what you're looking for. Again, that's what we use. We like to back ours up to the open space and point out into the community, because we've realized there's really no need to broadcast sound into our open space. And then it kind of builds on that environmental compliance by pushing the sound into the community. We want our community members to hear it and respond. We don't need the Mother Nature to really respond to any of our concerns there. So with that element, one implementation that they've really worked on in the last 2 years that I've found could be beneficial for us, but we're kind of past that initial hurdle, is sound sculpting and modeling. They have within the agency, they as in Genesis have been sending a lot of their technicians and engineers back to be able to provide more robust sound modeling. So as you proceed forward with deciding and looking into it, I'd encourage that whatever company you decide to look into, see if they have some level of sound modeling and sculpting. We had a very crude model when we first started. We had to kind of get creative with how we implemented our data collection on where people could hear them. Since I inherited this with already 6 sites in place, I built off that was already there and was able to kind of model myself, but I'm definitely no engineer when it comes to sound modeling. Novato and Sandra Fowler, I believe, are both going through a sound modeling process right now with Genesis. to where I believe they'll be able to provide good feedback if you're interested to find out what that process looks like. So additionally, I believe, speaking with Office of Emergency Management recently, there is a push for more robust sirens throughout the county, including Novato and San Rafael. What ultimate platform they're going to land on, I would encourage you to reach out to the Marin County Office of Emergency Management and see what they're interested in. They have direct access to the LROD currently. So the platform, a lot of different names, but the platform that Genesis works off of is the GEM platform. That's just the portal that either myself or if Tiburon PD or OEM, Office of Emergency Management, wanted to log in, that's the portal that they would log in to review and activate sirens, review if a siren has been recently activated, to review the status of that siren, whether or not it's got good connectivity, or if it's gone out of service for some reason. So again, I highly encourage the council to look into other opportunities to find out what else is out there and compare and contrast based on your needs. But LRAD or Genesis is proving itself to be a hugely beneficial tool that is open to evolving and adapting to our needs. One thing that we've run into more recently, as far as the sites that we've installed, we have 3 sites that are installed basically off grid. So all of our sites have battery backup as well as solar panels. They all use satellite uplink. There's other options for all these, but we tried to build as many redundancies into our individual sites as possible. Most of it's modeled off of what Mill Valley had already done. We doubled the amount of solar panels and batteries to see how long these could go into an extended blackout. During the summertime, every site works perfectly flawlessly and doesn't run into any impact. What we discovered in this last year with our extended storm coverage, after about 5 to 7 days for these off-grade sites, we start seeing one by one them drop off. The problem there was now the batteries have gone too low. When the sun comes back, some of them will pop back on, but some do struggle to recharge depending on the extended time that they were depleted. This just requires us to go and actually charge those batteries back up. What the engineers at Genesis have recently helped us develop, and we're about to implement to all 4 of those sites. Not only are we going to put shoreline power in so that they have dedicated power, but still we experience PSPS events. We experience just rolling power outage potentially, especially during a disaster. And we want these things to continue to move on. So I've been speaking with Genesis about having more redundancies built in. So one design that they helped me develop that we're about to start testing is a transfer switch that would allow us to effectively put a generator at the base of it. So even if it went out completely, we could still power it from a generator and bring it back up online manually, limiting our people from having to climb up and pull these heavy batteries out of the boxes, but allowing us to have direct access to some sort of AC power backup in addition to what's already there. So just a third redundancy built in so that we can maintain these sirens all the time without having additional assistance. And then the final caveat that I'd probably bring forward for you to consider is, just like you're experiencing with any infrastructure and age, they start to wear out and they start to kind of fade away as far as their functionality and their benefit. One thing that I've found more recently with Genesis that we're communicating about is, because we have such a robust system, as we move forward with more sites, there may be a benefit to having more of like a maintenance protection plan type of system set up versus just individual maintenance and repair. So far, we found very little impacts to each one. We've had one motherboard go out for some reason. We believe it was related to some construction that was in the area on that building. Another one was a satellite unit that went out. That one's on a golf course. So I think it goes without saying why the satellite dish or the uplink module went out. It showed signs of being struck by multiple golf balls. So that was pretty obvious there. That just goes with the terrain. But other than that, both those were original Mill Valley sites from 2019. None of the other issues have been run into any issues, and they're both covered under their warranty that was issued out with them when they were purchased. But moving forward over time, we're going to have 16, 17, we may even get up to 20 eventually. There's quite a few sites, and maintenance and longevity is paramount in our eyes in order to ensure that these sites do not fall to disrepair. So I think the one last element that I'd bring forward on that would be grant funding. And that's imperative that for us to make sure that we're looking at that to maintain our sites. There have been a number of different grants that have been floated in the last year, mainly through Cal OES and FEMA. There's been some BRIC grants that did qualify. Genesis is very good about sending me all the links every time they get pre-approved for a grant. The trick is you have to have that stuff implemented in language in, local hazard mitigation plans and other plans that are in place that will qualify you for those Cal OES funds. So that's what we're actively working on. Marin County is in the process as we speak to finalizing their 5-year multi-jurisdictional local hazard mitigation plan. And we've ensured that we've continued to work that scope of that project in there so that we can attempt to go for additional grants. And I'd encourage the town of Tiburon to be looking at that same line of thought, because that sets you up for 5 years to potentially put in for grants. And it doesn't have to just be LRAD, it could be any emergency siren. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions. I know it's a lot of information.
Questions from the dais?
Thank you for that. You mentioned that you would encourage us to look to other potential providers. But we're all part of the same kind of team here, right? I mean, so I'm just wondering, I'm looking to you, I think we're looking to you to say, we've done the due diligence, this is what we're recommending, right? If there are other providers that you think are worth considering, it would be helpful maybe if you brought them to us. I wouldn't know who to go to. The other question I had was, so you're talking about these that can give verbal commands, is that correct?
That's correct.
What would be a sample? Because my concern would be, like you get on trains. I'm supposed to understand that. If I'm in the community and this thing's just barking out some unintelligible words, that's not going to help at all. I'm thinking it should be a real simple, very enunciated voice that says evacuation or, tsunami, or check your, where else would they check on the Zone Haven kind of thing, or your text or Alert Marin. I mean, we've been driving people, we meaning I sit on Belvedere Block Captain Group, and we've been driving our people in our community to check Alert Marin and make sure they're aligned, signed up properly for that. So I'm just wondering what those reports would be.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, real quickly to the first one, obviously in no way am I employed by Genesis, so I don't feel like I'm sworn to have to 100% recommend them. I can speak highly to all the benefits that the technology has. I can't speak in volume to other companies of their ability, and this does connect to your second point, to provide that verbal enunciation that LRAD does. And in that regard, LRAD, I believe, and that's where this LRAD technology came from. A lot of my presentations to councils and city councils and town councils throughout our district have really been one main goal is to explain, what it is and what it is not. LRAD technology was originally used by more of a military entity as a handheld device because of its capability. The wavelength that the sound comes off this, right, why it started as a technology, allows for that sound to carry directly to your eardrums to where you hear a sound very clearly. And their claim to fame is that not only can they put out a message, but they can put it out very clear and articulate up to about a half mile away. Obviously line of sight, like I said, we can't bend it around mountains. And so you hear it as if they're standing in the room with you. Obviously no microphone for them, but that 70 decibels is a typical conversation in a room. So you can be a half mile away and still hear it. Actually, one of the days when I set off for the town of Tiburon during the Great Shakeout event at the Bel Air campus on Karen Way, when I got back to my office about an hour later, some of my staff, and I'm over in Sausalito, they're like, hey, were you sounding off something over somewhere in district? And I said, well, yes, why? And they said, well, we could hear it very clearly in our office. Their windows were open. It was a calm glass day. Obviously, we've got the bayfront in front of us. And Bel Air is in basically a bowl, which amplified that sound even more. But It speaks to the volumes of how well we can articulate the message.
Great.
Additionally, you have complete control over that message. You can control the volume. So if you want it louder or more quiet, you can control how loud it comes out. Any audio file that you can put in there, it'll present out to you. You can switch up the combinations between siren and verbal message. You can eliminate the siren altogether. You can direct people to Fire Safe Marin. And then the one additional element as far as what they would get from the warning that I've been working on with OEM, Office of Emergency Management, is they have an online mapping or GIS tool. If you go to emergency, I think it's emergency.marincounty.org. When you scroll in, they've got active, if there's a hazmat spill, they'll show you where it is. If there's an active fire, they'll drop it on the map. So one thing I've been working on with them is geolocating each siren. So if we activate one or all of them, or just a few, you can hover over which one is being active because it will show up. And then the message that it's currently putting out will be typed in text there as well. So then people, if they do hear a siren, that's one thing that I want to build that to, is the siren typically goes much further than
Mhm.
that half-mile radius. So you can very clearly fill an area with a siren. Not all people will hear the verbal message. If they're not directly in line of sight, they may get a siren bouncing off of a glass window or something else that's allowing it to make that turn differently than that voice message could. But hopefully the siren's enough to prompt them to go and want to go look for more information, which is all the old sirens had. It was just a siren. You're just hopeful that people were paying attention to go. I think it was some AM radio that they'd listen to find out what was going on. So definitely has a lot of tools. The reason why I explain that I promote looking into other ones is because I don't want any one agency to commit to anything that's not going to work for them. But obviously, I think from what I've said, there's quite a few benefits to LRAD, and they have not had any challenges that we haven't been able to overcome up until this point.
One other question I had was, or not, more of a comment. If there are going to be different sirens used, I think it would be really good to have an educational push to the community so that we understand what the differences are. Right now, it's a siren. Oh, a siren went off, but oh, that's the high-low. That means this, or that's the wave. That means that. Or I think that would be helpful to communicate to the community. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I had a couple of quick questions, just some for background. So first of all, you said there are 13 sites. Is that in Sausalito, Mill Valley, and Tiburon?
Correct. We recently installed one in Marin City on top of the fire station for Marin County. So we've brought Marin County kind of into the fold to test and see how that works for them. But the rest are all in the city of Mill Valley, the one site in the town of Tiburon, and then a few sites in Sausalito and some unincorporated locations within our district.
One in Tiburon?
There's currently one in the town of Tiburon.
Okay. Is that what we hear on Tuesday at noon? Is that?
Probably not. It would be the first Saturday of the month typically.
Okay, got it.
That's been the first, that's ever since we've had our current system, it has been tested the first Saturday of the month for about 10 minutes, Lori, now.
Mhm.
It goes for 1 minute.
Did 1 minute? Okay.
I guess one or two other quick questions. You mentioned that one of your recommendations is to look into other devices in Marin County, Novato, San Rafael. Who would actually do that?
Well, all three of those agencies, the Marin County Fire Department, Novato Fire Department, Novato Fire District, and the City of San Rafael Fire Department, they're all actively looking at LRAD, to my knowledge. That's the last reports I've got from all of them, as well as the Genesis company. The Office of Emergency Management, which was Office of Emergency Services, but recently changed to OEM,
Mhm.
is actually under the footprint of Marin County Fire.
Mhm.
They are probably the foremost in the county that would be looking into a more robust. We call ourselves the Southern Marin Fire Notification Network because we're very focused down here. But if it was to spread across the entirety of Marin County, and there was a last minute change to go to a different platform, it would be the Office of Emergency Management that would probably make that determination.
Right, but my takeaway was that we needed to, or someone needs to. I'm trying to understand who would actually do the tactical follow-up to do that.
That's something we need to discuss.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. So I'm I'm not
I was
lost.
gonna kind of bite my tongue until we talk about the siren system upgrade a little bit further down on the agenda, and then I'll kind of give you the
Yeah,
rundown a little
And
bit.
then lastly, I'm relatively new, so I appreciate your indulgence here. To my colleague's point, sirens for what? So I think that is something that's a black hole for me, and I would imagine most others to understand are there different sirens for different purposes? And it would be good for the citizenry of the area to know.
Yeah, I can provide some insight as far as what we're doing with our sirens, the initial intent behind them, and then what we're going. So sirens in general, it's just the physical piece that
Mhm.
we're talking about. As far as the sound, the siren that can be broadcasted, currently we use more of like the air raid style siren.
Mhm.
It has a slow buildup. We like it. So if there's any community nearby, they're not startled initially. You can
Mhm.
get the slow buildup. We let it typically carry over 2 cycles. And then we transition to whatever that message is, either warning, immediate danger, there's an evacuation order or warning in place, additional message as far as what's required, and then finish the warning or test of similar nature. More recently, we have not changed the siren, so the sound that's put out, but the messaging and the application of the initiation of these is being transitioned to also build out the platform to accommodate for things like tsunami or maybe, some sort of information that we need to provide regarding mudslide or anything that you would need to do an evacuation order or warning. But the original intent that Mill Valley was using them for and what we built them on is for a rapidly approaching wildfire that required an evacuation order or warning. That was our primary focus, continues to be. So if there's a wildfire, we'll use them. If not, we are just trying to build them out to be a more robust system to be able to accommodate on the more low-lying areas for like a tsunami where you would instruct residents to stay away from low-lying areas until they've been given an all clear. That is currently in conversations with the Office of Emergency Management, though.
Right. So just to clarify, the sound of the siren is relatively the same, but the
For us, yes.
messaging is different.
Yep.
So it's not to be deciphered by citizens to understand this one's for fire, that one's for tsunami.
Not
cetera.
typically. There are some elements to just sirens in general. High-low is a very common one. Police like to go around and educate the public that if they, if it's wildfire season and they hear a high-low, that is very natural and typical for that to mean to evacuate the area, that high-low, because it's very distinct from all our other sirens. Yeah, air raid, I think, has been very commonly used historically for things like tsunamis, or like not around here, but the Midwest for tornadoes. It gets the attention of the public. It's different than all the other sounds that you may hear. I wouldn't do a clock tower, like a bell or a chime, because people aren't going to react the same way to that. We want them to kind of stop in their tracks and listen and think clearly on what their next action should be. That's the huge benefit of LRAD, is hopefully within 20 seconds of hearing that and they've stopped. Now we click on the message and say, this is what we'd like you to do.
Got it.
Either hop on Alert Marin or whatever it is that we want them to do, evacuate the area immediately. I think in one of my early presentations, I mentioned how this could be evolved to be used for any other sort of messaging that you want to use for an emergency. For instance, an extended evacuation period, where now PD is taking more of a control role while whatever's going on minimizes, and you can continue to sound that siren on a 15-minute rotation saying, only certain people are allowed in this area under whatever code, please evacuate the area or proceed to the 101 corridor, whatever you want to encourage people to not be in the area anymore to assist with PD or whatever else. So however you want to implement it.
Thank you.
Oh, for your benefit, we have had 2 systems on the peninsula, Belvedere Tiburon Peninsula, for a number of years now. The one is our current siren system, Well, we have 5 or 6 sirens around the peninsula, and it depends to a certain extent how close you are to the point where you can hear them. We have had another system called Snap Radio, which is the Belvedere emergency radio that we have had for several years. It's been very problematic ever since the beginning, and we're gonna talk about that in a minute.
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry, you can't do that. So that's kind of historical. We have to look at both of these. Now, I was not even aware until 2 weeks ago that our siren system was no longer functional. I found that out in a discussion with Lori. I didn't even know it. And my question, I guess, to Lori and to Mike, do we have a subcommittee now? Do we have any group that is looking at this to see? My understanding is the radio or the siren system is outdated, so we have to replace it.
So that was an agenda item 2 down, and I was gonna speak to that, if we can hold off until.
Okay, a couple other questions. Marshall, I was not aware, I've heard of LRAD for 4 or 5 years now, obviously, since you put it in Mill Valley. I was not aware it was a proprietary company. Now you're telling me LRAD and Zonehaven are both proprietary by Genesis, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, but you still favor them over any other options?
From my experience with their ability to accommodate our needs and our asks, and then what the future seems to be able to provide for us and their technology, I think they're most applicable for where and I speak to Southern Marin specifically, our geographical location is. Part Sioux, Mill Valley had already stepped in, and we had 5 sites already that we're building upon. But looking at the other options out there, I know Paradise recently went with an alternative that was more conducive to what they were looking at up there. But Berkeley removed.
You're saying Paradise, California. not
Paradise, California.
Paradise.
I did a similar presentation for Paradise. I'm not familiar with the company they went with, but they just went for another alternative route up there. Berkeley went for, I think they're installing 16 to 20 LRAD sites over in Berkeley. So it really plays to what you're looking for. One thing with LRAD is there's really no, what I've found, and I'm sure if you push hard enough, they do it, but there's no real wiggle room for them to try and change their look. They're very much a white horn with a white box, and they sit on the horn. So if you want to, you could spray paint them a different color, I'm sure, but the aesthetics of them are very much set.
So there are several options that we as a community will have to look at, investigate, and then decide what we want to do.
Whatever meets your needs best.
Right.
But
And
I
you mentioned that when you put your sirens in Mill Valley, they were your LRADs, they were to a certain extent problematic 5 years ago. Have you overcome most of those?
The only 2 that had issues with them were directly related to, some level of manipulation, either a power surge from construction in the area or impacts from devices.
So you've been able to overcome most of those?
They were all overcome. The company was great. They sent techs out. They replaced them at no additional cost to us, and they were very prompt. They notified us before we were even made aware that they were not functioning. So before we were even able to log and find out, or OEM advised us, they let us know, hey, there's something going on with these sites. We'd like to come out and take a look at.
And you said your batteries are heavy and cumbersome. Are they Tesla batteries? What brand are they?
No, there's a typical like a lead acid deep cycle battery. I believe they're lead acid, if I'm not mistaken, but they're very similar to any type of marine type device that requires a heavy drawdown with a recharge afterwards, that deep cycle technology.
And you mentioned they have been adequate for a couple of PSPs, but if we had a total power shutdown for the whole community, how long would that battery system last?
If the sun is out during peak, solar aspect, we have not seen them. We had 4 remote sites that had no alternate power. They were completely standalone from the moment they got turned on. Even through the evening, they didn't go down. So the batteries can sustain them for what we found was extended. I went back and tracked the weather after we had our first one go off, and it was about a 5.5 day window of very limited to no solar. So they had no additional recharge. So those batteries lasted for somewhere between 5 and 7 days. More recently, I was just informed that their newest software update, because they ran into the problems in some of their higher elevation sites that experienced more snow coverage on their solar panels, they created a low power kind of mode where they can go into low power mode. They're claiming that could extend the battery life without any power or solar input up to 10 to 14 days. So now we're getting more of a. almost closer
One
to
last
a-
question. Our Snap radio system, as I said, has been problematic ever since it's been put in, and we're going to talk about that, I guess. How, if we got a new system, LRAD system, how would that interact? Could we get rid of the Snap radio? Because now, obviously, our siren system, you cannot communicate. So we thought that, we could communicate to the Snap radio. We've tried that. It's the reception has been very iffy in different parts of the community. So if we put in this new system, can we get rid of the Snap radio system? Can we communicate enough over this new system to satisfy our needs?
I'm not familiar with the intent or use of the Snap radio system, so I couldn't speak to that.
It was originally introduced about 3 city managers ago so that we could alert the community, or if the community was alerted by a siren, they would turn to 840 AM, which is a Snap, the radio frequency, and get directions from a tape or from Lori as to what to do locally in the community.
And I could speak to that real quickly. I think we would keep both, redundancy. We want more items. We can put out a lot more information on Snap Radio. I think I can talk for 4 minutes on that and put out a lot of information on the radio station that just repeats. Whereas the siren, you're going to be a lot more precise and quick. So they have different purposes. And the radio station might get to one place where the siren doesn't. I think we would want all the tools.
Well, I agree with you in redundancy, Lori, but the concern about that I have with the Snap radio system is that we have tried that, testing it several times, many times over the years. And Rich Pierce has always said, well, we can only broadcast at 5 watts. And that's why you can't hear it all over the place. And if we have a legitimate disaster, we'll boost that to 20 watts or whatever. But we've never tested that I'm aware of. So do we really know that's true?
No, but we could test it.
I'm sorry.
We could test it.
I'm not sure that's even allowed.
It's not
Yeah,
Oh,
an FCC thing.
yeah. So see, that's a basic problem we have.
Got to get some authorities from the FCC to do that.
Yeah. All right, anyway. Any other questions from the audience about this? Is a complex thing that we're gonna have to work on. And you're gonna tell us what sort of progress we've had so far and when you get a minute.
first, I would like to introduce our new police captain, Jared Yee, who started with us just a few months ago. And Jared, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself? Thank you, Marshall.
Thank you, Marcia.
Thank you.
Pretty difficult to sit in the chair, as you can see. So hopefully I can get into this chair.
Just can't get out.
You
Good
need
evening.
fewer guns, I think.
Yeah, the chairs are just a little too small here. Good evening, everyone. As Lori said, my name is Jared. This is my second time here at this meeting, and this June will be 19 years of law enforcement experience for me. I've been here since September. I spent the last 12 years with the San Francisco Police Department, and it's been a great time here so far, and I'm learning about the town and very excited to be included on these meetings.
Welcome.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome to the community.
Thank you.
Okay, so we will then move on, and Lori, are we down to the siren system upgrade now?
So the siren system upgrade, Captain Yee and I met with Aaron Miller from the fire department a few months back. And he let us know that our old sirens are outdated, and the company that was supporting them and our go-to when we had maintenance or issues, they are no longer. So our system needs to be upgraded, which is why I had invited Marshall to come back and give us an update on the LRAD siren, which he had presented to us prior to it being put in at Bel Air School. But I wanted to get an update, and I'm hoping to get a couple more presentations at the next meetings on different siren systems so that we can look at the different options. Historically, the Disaster Advisory Council has either come up with a subcommittee or as a whole come up with a recommendation for the city and town councils for systems. And so what I'm hoping is that we will hear the presentations, whether we make a subcommittee or not, or a task force, whatever we want to call it, that's going to be up to you. And then come up with something that we recommend for the councils or for the town managers.
Would, would those presentations be made by the manufacturer, like sales reps, or would we have similar to Marshall, a first responder that has evaluated it and given?
I'm gonna
their-
talk to the County Office of Emergency Services as well as County Fire and see what they say. And so I don't know the answer to that just yet. Whoever is best suited to speak.
It's all well and good to hear from the salespeople,
Right.
but I think, hearing from first responders and that are actually using this is also very helpful.
I
Thanks.
totally agree. I'm on the same page.
Lori,
And yes,
just on that. Come on, there we go. I think it would be really important, obviously, to have fire law or whoever, law enforcement, whoever, looking at that, but to also have some kind of comparison grid, because it could be quite overwhelming, and unless somebody's done some kind of apples to oranges or apples to apples, it could be one slide, it could be a memo or whatever, but I think that would be helpful in terms of understanding what direction we ought to go in.
Lori, I think this is going to be a fairly complex issue, and we can't wait for this committee to make decisions because we meet so infrequently. We're going to have, Mike, has the fire department suggested any sort of task force or anything to look at this?
Not necessarily a task force, but we were kind of waiting to see in this new year where we were at with a lot of different things. I would suggest that 2 or 3 of the board and several law enforcement and public safety be on that task force, including Lori, but.
Well, I certainly would too, and I think we need to get going on it sooner than later.
I totally agree.
We're gonna have to have a few extra meetings and then kind of go from there and see how complex it is. So can we leave that up to you to come? up
I'll
with
ask
some
for
sort of-
volunteers maybe to be part of a task force. I
Okay.
can send out an email looking for some people.
Okay. Okay, comments about our existing systems? Mary,
I was
go
just
ahead.
gonna say, and I would suggest that it be concentrated time or fast tracked in some way so that we don't lose momentum over time. And we actually can pretty quickly come up with a comparison and recommendation.
Marshall, roughly what do you think, and not have to be accurate, the cost of replacing our current siren system with say a LRAD system? I guess it's got all sorts of options, but an average LRAD system.
Typically, the quote on an average LRAD minus, the additional infrastructure installation, so a pre-existing. I think historically you're sitting in like the 116,000 per site.
Per site.
Per site, but it could go up obviously with costs and everything else. But that was typically our ballpark was about.
So we're talking about $500,000 here at least.
For each set of 2 sites, yeah. But,
I'm sorry, I thought you said per site.
Per site. And I think.
We have 5 sites.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so that's a major expense, okay. All right, well, Laura, we'll wait to hear from you about where to go with that. Any other concerns about either one of those systems? Okay, that's it. Patrick Kerslake is not here, is he?
No, so he doesn't have any update on the Snap radio system yet at this point.
Okay,
The public communication information push, Mary and I had spoken prior to the previous meeting, and I'm working on getting a push out there to let people know about Alert Marin, Snap Radio. Nextdoor has been great for putting information out, and we recently put a post out on Nextdoor that included the emergency portal for Marin County that Marshall had mentioned. And if you haven't checked it out, the Marin County emergency portal, which is, I believe, emergency.marincounty.org. Either way, Google the Marin emergency portal. It has all the latest information on road closures, power outages, weather forecasts for the entire county, and it's very descriptive, and the map is amazing. So we're really trying to push people towards Nextdoor, social media, the emergency portal, and Alert Marin to try to get the information out. And we are still using Snap Radio. It doesn't hit everywhere, but it does hit a pretty good chunk of the peninsula. And we are keeping that message updated. There's a rain and wind warning out there right now on the radio station.
Questions, comments? Okay, get ready to go. 94920 item.
That's a Lori thing, but I'll be working with her on it.
Okay.
I think we're just in the planning stages and we need to figure out a date and.
Yep.
make
We're already
sure-
talking about it. It will happen again this year.
Yeah, and
Okay.
we need to make a grant application.
All right. And Belvedere Block Cabin Program update.
So two things are in the works. One is a higher level table drill, pulling together some of our first responders, the block captain leadership team, and just doing a scenario at the table and just talking through what's happening next and how would this happen and how's that gonna, which I've been really wanting to do because I keep feeling like, okay, if an emergency happens, how do I communicate with Tiburon EOC and how do we, we're acting as triage, but where do we go with that? I don't want to just have to call 911. I'd rather be able to reach someone. So we're gonna work through that. Sorry?
Said blood.
Bless you. The other thing that we're doing is more of a full block captain training day that we're now discussing. We're in the process of putting together a survey to go out to our block captains to try to get a sense of what they need from us as a leadership team. And then we'll tailor some trainings towards that. And maybe we'll probably repeat the day in Belvedere Park that we did last year, but with more specific training based on what block captains need. But the program is alive and well.
And I would simply add the tabletop that Adam talked about will not be all 90 block captains in Belvedere. That would be too confusing at this point. It will be mostly an administrative function, trying to sort out how we administer this stuff. It will involve both of us. Probably somebody in the city council, Jason Wu, Robert Zadnick, and that group, so we can, and hopefully somebody in the fire service, Mike, when we get to that point. So
Mike responded, you weren't going to be available, but you were recommending someone.
Yeah, our operations chief, Steve Artigo.
Great.
Okay, good.
Just a quick question for background. Tiburon does not have a block captain program.
That is not correct. There is one. It's just a little bit more disparate, and Lori can address that.
We do have a block captain program. They're just not, it's not all inclusive. We have some really active block captains and neighborhoods, but not all of them.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, let's see, evacuation decals. We discussed this ad nauseum at every meeting, it seems. Where are we? Laura?
So I spoke with Tony Boyd today, and he said that the fire department has helped them create a map and they know exactly where they're gonna go. Unfortunately, they are short-staffed. They had a very sad loss at Public Works. And rainy season is here, and it's probably a couple months out. As soon as the rain clears and they're fully staffed again, they're gonna get put down.
We're actually going to see them on the streets.
They're in Tiburon. They're just,
They're in my neighborhood.
Belvedere.
yeah, we're just waiting for Belvedere.
All
So
right.
very soon.
Good, okay. Let's see. Oh, at one of our meetings fairly recently, we asked, I'm not, if it was Jason Wu perhaps, for an after-action report on the Stinson Beach evacuation drill, or none of the drills, an evacuation for flooding a month or so ago. Anybody, have we contacted anybody to see if we could get that done?
We could have that as a presentation at the next meeting if you'd like.
Why don't we do that?
I'll talk to Marin County Search and Rescue. I think they were very heavily involved in that.
Good. And that, our evacuation here is a problematic issue and has been for a number of years. And every time we try to solve it, it seems to create more problems with school traffic and everything else. So I think we'd probably benefit from that and see where we are. Announcements from the group, life-saving skills class that we're giving that involves not only CPR, stop the bleed, but also Narcan, AED, and Heimlich maneuver. I've given that now 4 times at the San Francisco Yacht Club. I've given it the Tiburon Police Department. I have now given it at the library, and Kristen was there. Just last weekend, we hopefully will be giving the first one for residents of the community at the library this coming Saturday, if there's sufficient interest. So we'll follow up and see. Kristen, any comments about the class?
I think everyone really appreciated your presentation. A lot of interesting facts were included, and I think people really feel more confident that they can help.
Good. We just want to get that out to the community to the extent we can. It's somewhat laborious, but it's something I think we need to do, so we'll keep working at it.
How are
Any-
we doing that through
I'm sorry?
through the ARC or on the website or?
We really haven't advertised it yet. We are advertising, the Yacht Club, obviously, it's a private organization, so they do publicize it in their bulletins. The library has been now advertising it recently in some of the stuff they send out. Trying to get people interested in this sort of stuff is not like running a program where everybody's knocking down the door to
Right.
come to the thing. It's sort of like grabbing collars and dragging people in, so it'll take a while to get it going. But I think people that have taken it will appreciate the fact that it has some important information, and so we'll keep it up and gradually build it over time. Okay, any other 5 o'clock? I guess any other comments from the dais from the group? Lori, anything else? Okay. Next meeting is April 16.
April 16th at 4 o'clock.
Perhaps a meeting in the interim to get this task force, whatever we call it, off the ground, see where we are.
Okay.
Okay, thank you all for coming. Appreciate it. Okay, see you tonight.